makes money off American intervention. But the big companies, Exxon, Mobil, the big oil companies, they were against the war. They were against sanctions against Iraq because they saw the way to cheaper oil and more available oil was through free trade, not through sanctions and not through war.
Yeah, this seems like the most expensive way possible to get this oil is to go in and take over an entire country. We will be paying, you know, $3, $4, $5 a gallon for this oil if this is indeed a war for oil.
Well, it's even more complicated than that. For example, there are no refineries in Iraq to make gasoline. All gasoline is imported into Iraq. The U.S. buys gasoline from surrounding Gulf countries for $1.50 to $2 a gallon. We sell it in Iraq for 5 cents a gallon. That is the going price in Iraq. Now, what does that mean? That means that we are going to have to continue to subsidize Iraqi gasoline forever, or at some point we're going to have to stop subsidizing it, and the price of gasoline in Iraq is going to go from a nickel to $1.50 instantaneously. Now, that is destructive for both the United States economy and the Iraqi economy. There's only one group that it's helping, and that's groups like Halliburton, who make the money off of bringing that oil from Saudi Arabia, or bringing the gasoline from Saudi Arabia into Iraq for the government to sell, for the U.S. government to sell for a nickel a gallon.
And you know, this is, I often say, you know, we don't have capitalism now. What we have now is kind of a corporate welfare economy. And in capitalism, in real capitalism, not what, not Republican and Democrat capitalism, but actual capitalism, war is actually very bad for the economy and very bad for people who are really honestly making money. For instance, if you wanted to build a tank and you have a bunch of resources going to build a tank, and what does it really do? It's not really doing anything. Then if there's a war, you pay to ship it all the way overseas where it goes and wrecks stuff that you're going to have to pay to rebuild. If you spent that money on building new computers, then those people could take those computers and build industry, build corporations, make other jobs, build products, and things that people can use. But war is just money that goes into a black hole.
That's right.
It goes even nowhere.
Exactly. Even luxury items, which a lot of people say, oh, people shouldn't be allowed to drive big cars or whatever. That makes jobs. It makes a continuum in the economy that makes everyone richer. War does the opposite, because the only thing that's going into is destructive products.
Right. War makes us poorer.
That's right. Exactly. And you know, the other thing is that you have the same sort of corruption and corporate welfare that you have domestically, you have that in war. For example, the Stryker vehicle, which has been, they just spent $18 billion to revamp this tank transport vehicle. Well, there's a problem. It works great. It's a little bit too heavy, won't go on the plane. So it's great if you want to like ship it by boat over to Iraq, but that gets very, very expensive, and they can't load them on the transport planes.
Maybe they'll start selling them domestically, like they did with the Hummer.
Probably so. That's so. We'll see them riding down the street pretty soon. Yeah.
Yeah, the war surplus vehicles. But yeah, probably in Iraq, they'll probably leave a lot of them there, and the Iraqis will come and get them running again.
Well, they can't even, yeah, but they can't even get them to Iraq.
Yeah, that's true. So, I mean, the ones that they have there now, I mean, imagine the money it takes to ship all of these tanks to Iraq. I mean, it's huge. It's endless billions of dollars. So war does make us poorer, and wars usually end up being fought by poor people.
That's right.
So it's like you're manufacturing. It's a very vicious cycle. I'm very much against it. I think it's always a racket. And when I see the justification for going to war change, I'm very, very disturbed. Because when we look at the Nazis, for instance, at least we can see clearly these are very bad people. This is a very bad system of government. we have to stop it, you know? But now there's nothing clear. This is like the Gulf War, and the two wars we've had in Iraq. These are like mystery wars to me. Historians seem to be arguing and speculating for years to come over why we fought these wars. There doesn't seem to be any. You talk to 10 different people, you'll get 10 different opinions of why we're fighting this war.
Well, you know, even if you look historically, unfortunately, a lot of these things don't even get cleared up decades later, because today you can't get a consensus from people as to why we were in Vietnam. Most people don't really understand why we were in Vietnam or what led up to it. You know,
stopping communism.
Well, we're the ones that set it up in 1946 when we gave the French back their colonies. We set it up to create the situation that led to communism in Indochina.
And now we find out we were giving money to both sides because we were funding both sides. We were giving money to Czechoslovakia, I believe, to help wean them off of communism. I don't know how you wean people off of communism by giving them welfare, but that was the logic. And they were taking that money and giving it to the Viet Cong.
Well, that's true. As a matter of fact, if you look at the total amount of money that the United States gave through various programs to Iron Curtain countries, and you add all that up, it was more than the amount of money that the Soviet Union gave to Vietnam to fight against us. So we essentially were financing both sides in that war.
It's completely insane. So then, as we're financing its government also to go astray a little bit, finances both sides of a lot of things. Like in this country, to give an example, we finance the tobacco farmers. Then we finance commercials to go on television to get us not to smoke the tobacco we paid to grow. So it's very much the nature of government to fund both sides of a problem.
Also, when you're talking about foreign policy, we are trying to find the group to fund at that particular moment to help us with what we think we want to do. Often we're turning that person or that group into a future enemy. We financed the groups, the Mujahideen in Afghanistan during the war with the Soviet Union that eventually became Al-Qaeda. So we helped finance Al-Qaeda. In the same way, the government of Israel financed the small group Hamas and made them into a large organization in order to try and put up some competition to Yasser Arafat.
Oh, really?
Yes. We finance.
So that was an entity that backfired on them.
It always backfires. And if you look at our involvement with Saddam Hussein, we were a strong ally of Saddam Hussein during the Iran-Iraq War. And we saw Saddam as our person in the Middle East to balance against the Islamic fundamentalism that was coming out of Iran and other countries in the region. Israel
is another good example of funding both sides of a conflict. We're giving money to both sides. We're giving money to the Palestinians and we're giving money to the Israelis.
Well, our number one recipient of foreign military aid is Israel. Our number two recipient is Egypt. And we are giving Egypt money in order to balance Israel within the region. At the same time, we're giving another almost $1 billion a year to the Palestinian Authority, which is as corrupt as any government is.
So we've been trying to buy peace in the region, and it hasn't been working.
No, we're buying more guns in the region is what we're doing. And if you look at, going back to the Iran-Iraq War, we financed Saddam Hussein. We set him up with many of the so-called weapons of mass destruction that he then used in the Iran-Iraq War. We gave him the intelligence that helped him in the battle where 5,000 to 10,000 Kurds were gassed to death.
So if there were any weapons of mass destruction there, they were weapons that we gave to them.
All of the weapons of mass destruction that Saddam Hussein actually had prior to 1991. According to what we know now, most of them were destroyed in 1991. But prior to 1991, he